It's Lloyd de Jong. For those who have difficulty pronouncing my surname, I keep running into people who have no idea how to say my surname. It's de Jong, and I'm here with Usama Darkwing Duck, in case you don't know how to say his surname. And I'm here with JC, who's hiding in a Bitcoin salt mine where he is busy making the salt. At least I think so. Could be not true. But yeah, hey, we're back and we're gonna we're here to talk about the source and origins of the mythical stories in the Quran that apparently Allah got from other books and children's tales and myths and legends and Jewish stories and Gnostic tales and then apparently Muhammad somehow thought this was revelation from Allah. And we're here to do our fourth episode on this already, right? Usama, so welcome, guys.
I believe so, yeah.
And hello, and welcome to the audience, and hello, Just Janice. Good to see you. So, guys, your thoughts on everything we've uncovered so far? It looks like 99.9, 100% of all the stories in the Quran are based on stories for kids.
Yeah. Some of them are for kids and some of them are for imagination. You have to use your imagination to try to comprehend and understand the stories, because I don't think some of these stories really kids can understand, because even mature cannot understand. But the source of the information is so powerful. And for years, as I shared with you before, even if you look at my Quran translation, I said copied from legends or copied from whatever as a source. But I never saw that actually more than that, which I know from the Quran is not from a God, but some other sources. As you start digging into this, like, oh my world, I did not know that much. I need to learn more to figure out what else Muhammad copied. Literally, in the Arabic broadcast, which I do with Brother Muhammad and Brother Yusuf, we discovered, for example, the story of Joseph. The entire story, the entirety of the story is coming up from the legends of the Jews. I mean, I thought Muhammad went off on some of the information he shared about Joseph, which you and I covered, by the way, in my first book. But then I discovered, oh my world, this coming word for word from the legends. I mean, he added some, but the rest of the story is not Bible. It have nothing to do with the Bible. Even when you get to the names of Al-Aziz's wife, Zalicha. Well, how did Muhammad know Al-Aziz or Zulaykha? Oh, he got it from the legends of the Jews. And so Muhammad and his scholars were professional copiers. They were just copying the legends in the Quran. And mashallah, mashallah, now we have the holy, perfect word of Allah in the Arabic language, which is
based on true mythical stories from many different cultures.
Amen. Amen.
And yes, hello, Ave Maria. Happy Easter, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful, blessed, safe Easter. Good to see you all back. It is freezing cold here in Poland. The wind is nasty, but we're going to make it. And yeah, good to see everyone again.
How far are you from Iran, like distance-wise?
Within missile range, apparently.
So it's going to get warmer. Trust me. In the next couple of days, that cold weather is going to be gone and it's going to get real hot.
All right.
If you know why.
Yeah. So you know what I'm going to do, like to keep the shaitan away. I'm gonna buy a copy of the Quran and I'm gonna dip it in pig's blood. I'm gonna keep it on the wall here. That might just keep me safe. You never know.
Amen.
So yeah, JC, your thoughts so far on the fact that all of these Islamic stories, and we're going to go through many more as we go through the next 3,221 episodes of this. We're going to find that all of these stories are actually based on myths, legends, midrashim, targums, Talmudic stories, Zoroastrian stories, Christian myths, kiddies' tales. Yeah, your thoughts on all of this so far?
I think it paints a very different picture to what we have been told, because now that we see where all of these stories were coming from, we know that it couldn't be one guy telling to the world, oh, look, all of these stories, I'm receiving them from the heavens. Like everybody would have known that there are the stories that they heard in the markets and stuff. So because the balance is going towards more and more things having been copied, then we see that there is less room in the Quran for original stories, and that is what we are looking for. So as we continue going, it looks like maybe, just maybe, the whole of the book was completely copied from lots of other stories, and then they just tried to make it about Muhammad very haphazardly. So very interesting.
I mean, look, yeah, they looked at the Quran. They said, "Hey, everything in here is a copy of something else. We need something original." So Muhammad said, "Like, how about we hate puppies? That's original."
But I have a question for you, Lloyd. If he was really copying everything from other books, as we already know for a fact, why he keep repeating these stories in the Quran, contradicting himself?
That's that's a question that actually is asked in the book we've been working with. The guy says the same. It's like there's multiple different. Imagine, as JC has made videos, imagine the Bible was written like that. You had 5 different versions of the same story, and none of them line up. Everyone would be. Imagine the apostles were like the Sahaba. It's like, what happened after Jesus died? Well, all the apostles went to war and they murdered each other. And then what happened was John was praying, and then Paul came up and stabbed him in the back in the synagogue. And then what happened was Peter later on stabbed Paul, and then he took over, and then he went to war with the other apostle James. And then what happened was Jesus' mother Mary, she got 10,000 troops on a camel, and they went to. You're like, that is like bizarre, but that's exactly what happened with the Muslims.
I'm trying to put my head around the differences in the narratives. How even in every, forget about even the stories repeated. You go to one verse, and they will start interpretation by saying, اختلف العلماء اختلف المفسرون. The scholars or the interpreter disagree. And then he give you 10 different stories about the same verse. Like, which one did really happen? We were doing a show just last week about the resurrection. And then we went to Quran chapter 4, verse 157, 158. And Allah said they did not kill him nor crucify him, but it was made to appear to them. That's okay. That's okay. Now, let's go to Al-Tabari. And he gave you 10 different stories about, first, Jesus have his 11 disciples, or 13 disciples, or 17 disciples, or 19 disciples. Like, if the scholars of Islam does not agree about how many disciples did Jesus have, how in the world you can make me believe in the rest of the fairy tale you've given me to explain to me how this somebody else took the place of Jesus on the cross and served Jesus? It's a comedy. I said in the end of the show, if Muslims have little logic, little common sense, and read the interpretation of the scholars of Islam, the Quran 4:157, not only they would disbelieve in Islam, they will actually become an atheist. They would disbelieve there is no God, period. Forget about God.
Yeah, Ave Maria says, did you hear about the Muslims committing bestiality on cats in Rome? Now, look, I have not heard about this, but there actually is a Muslim, I think in the UK, a Pakistani, who was arrested for, let's just say he was doing the deed with chickens and his wife was filming it, and he was arrested for this. And I think we're all suffering a little bit of Muslim fatigue at this point. And maybe the more Islamophobia we have and the less Islam we have in the West, I think the better off we all are.
Yeah.
Well, we need to save the dogs and also save the cats as well. Just briefly on what Usama
said.
And the
chickens now. And the chickens. And the geese, for that matter, the ducks. They're killing the ducks in the ponds as well.
So on what Usama said, that you see the Quran, every Muslim will say the Quran is the very clear book because the Quran says so. But if you just show them Surah 355, where it says, Allah said to Isa, I will cause you to die, the actual exegesis, some of them say that it will happen in the future on the day of judgment, and others say that happened 2,000 years ago. He was just asleep. So they cannot even agree as to the timing of that verse. So it doesn't really matter. You show this to Muslims and say, look, your own scholars have no idea what this story was talking about. They were just trying to come up with an excuse for the verse. They still don't see it. They say, no, very clear. It's like, but they don't know what this verse means. And this is your scholars. It's nonsense.
Yeah. And they build all their hope on the scholars' knowledge. on the scholar's interpretation when the scholars do not know jack about what the verses are talking about. So they are blind, leading the blinds into the hole of hell. And that is exactly where all Muslims will end, because they believe in a lie. Yeah. The whole idea is it's just Jesus did not die and he never rose from the dead, and Muhammad is the final messenger, and Allah sent him 600 years later after Allah deceived all the millions of Christians. Just think about it. How many thousands and thousands and thousands of Christians were killed because of their belief in a lie created by Allah? Somebody else died, and somehow, and then you go for 2,000 years until today, and we still believe in that lie. And Allah assured us in the Quran, He will make those who believe in Isa above those who disbelieve in Him until the day of resurrection. I do not know what Allah was drinking when He made that statement, because where are these Christians who are supposed to be alive today who believe in Isa, son of Mary? If every Christian we know believe in the resurrection of the Lord Jesus Christ, who died 2,000 years ago and rose again, but somehow it was not Jesus, it was somebody else, and the scholars of Islam disagree about who is that one and how it happened. God help us.
And taking the interpretations of scholars in Islam is considered shirk. So there you go. They should not interpret the words of Allah, but that's actually what they do, because they take the religion from Ibn Kathir. But sorry, Lloyd, that went right for too long.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into this. We'll continue as we go. So we ended here last time, which was about the Jewish legends in the Quran. And this is about the raven who taught Adam how to bury a body, whereas in the Quran it is Cain who was taught by a raven to bury a body, because humans at that time didn't know that you bury bodies. So the passage of the Quran is not a literal translation, but it is a free reproduction of the story as told to Muhammad by some of his Jewish friends, of whom early Arabian accounts mention the names of several. So, yeah, so there could be free oral tradition that was passed on, and someone misheard it, or someone miswrote it, or someone deliberately changed it. Who knows? But we know that most of the story is something that occurred within the Jewish texts prior, hundreds of years prior to Muhammad. And what is certain is we can, in many instances, trace the account which Muhammad gives to earlier Jewish written sources. And I've got a few more picked out for today.
Yeah, but before we leave Adam, if you don't mind, and the Cain and the barrier of Abel, in the interpretation of so-called scholars of Islam, Cain carried his brother Abel, I don't know where he come up with the names, on his back for an entire year, because he does not want some of the creatures to eat the body of his brother. Imagine that was me. Use your imagination.
That's when Muslims invented the song, "He ain't heavy, he's my brother."
Yeah, that's a good song. It's coming with a true story, Cain and his brother. But anyway, so where is the logic? Was Adam really that dumb? Was Cain is that dumb, does not know about burying his brother, but carry his brother on his back for 12 months? What happened to his body, the body of his brother, and Cain's own back within the end of that 1 year?
I mean,
now, if you say this is not an accurate translation, interpretation of the scholars of Islam, now you are not a good Muslim. And if you reject it and say this is all made up fairy tale, which we know coming from the legends, then you have to go back to the Bible and become a Christian. But the sad thing is, I see that most Muslims who reject the Quran teachings and the scholars of the Quran interpretation, they end being atheists, not a Christian, because they were deceived for generations. They, their fathers, their ancestors, into Islam without knowing it, and when they got to know it, found that to be a fairy tale, and then they end leaving all the belief completely, which is another victory.
Didn't the body start smelling after a couple of days?
No, not at all. Not at all. No.
I mean, wasn't it rotting on his back?
No, 12 months was okay at this time because that was years ago.
Right.
I'm telling you, there's no any simple imagination. Just a little bit logic. You figure out that something is wrong with the story. The scholars do not know what they're talking about. Now, I wonder if in the legend, did they say anything about him carrying his brother on his back for a year?
No, I think that probably is wholesale.
That's extra. That's Muhammadan extra information, his great scholars.
Oh my God, carrying a dead person on your back. Oh my gosh, your brother, you're dead. Oh my, yeah.
Because he did not know what to do. I mean, think about it. He killed your brother. He did not know what to do. And then Allah in his mercy sent the ravens, and we know the rest of the story.
You say, so hold on. He says, is it possible for you guys to link with Christian apologetics such as God Logic? You know God Logic, don't you? I have his phone number in my phone, but you know him, don't you, Usama?
Absolutely. If anytime you want to do a program with him, we can call him, and if he will not join us, we'll kidnap him and he will join us.
Yeah.
It's easy. I can kidnap him in no time whatsoever.
Yeah, no, because we spoke a long time ago about doing a show together, but yeah, that was ages ago. We never got around to it. I mean, this is retarded. So see, he carries his brother on his back. But anyway, so there's a link that is missing in Mishnah Sanhedrin, chapter 4, section 5. We find that the narrative of the murder of Abel becomes clear. God spoke to Cain, "What hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground." Now, this, of course, takes us to what's it? Quran 5:35. What was it?
I believe so.
Where, but basically it's got to do with, in which passage the word blood is the plural in Hebrew because it denotes bloodshed by violence. Thus, concerning Cain who slew his brother, we have found that it is said concerning him, the voice of 532, that's it, yeah. The voice of thy brother's bloods crieth. He saith not thy brother's blood, but thy brother's bloods. His blood and the blood of his descendants. On this account was Adam created alone, to teach thee that everyone who destroys one soul out of Israel, the scripture reckoneth it unto him as if he had destroyed the whole world. And everyone who preserve alive one soul out of Israel, the scriptures reckon it unto him as if he had preserved alive the whole world. So Muslims love to quote that as the Quran teaches peace, but no, it says specifically, we decreed for the children of Israel. But of course, Israel never existed. There were no Jews and there were no Israelites and there was Palestinians only. But Allah doesn't know about Palestine. Allah doesn't know about Palestinians. And Allah never once mentions Palestinians or Palestine. But Allah does mention Israel 40 plus times.
41 times. Twice Israel as the father, and 39 times is Banu Israel, the children of Israel. Yeah.
Yeah, and none of this makes sense. I mean, and Muslims also don't quote you the next verse, which says, and for the Muslims, we decree that if anyone brings fitna, then you need to crucify them.
Cut their hands and legs up the
sides. You're like, that's for the Muslims, and the Jews
which,
are like...
Which, by the way, Lloyd, if you think about it, to crucify somebody, you need both arms. And he said, cut hand and legs from opposite side and crucifies him. It's like, how are you going to crucify a guy with one hand and one leg?
Who knows, man? None of this makes sense. So this is the 35th verse of Surah Al-Ma'idah, as an almost literal translation of this. Yeah, it's 532. But so next is, I don't want to go through because this is quite a long section. I don't want to do the whole thing. But
no. I love it. Don't stop.
Fine.
Don't drop it.
The story of Abraham's deliverance from the fire. Now, the difference is here that this guy goes into some depth and detail on the actual story, and he goes through all of the original sources. So he really goes at length into where the story came from, how it's used in the Quran, how the Jews told it, and how it was then used in the tafsirs and so on. So he goes into some detail. So this for you, Usama, is also quite useful.
I know.
Now, this narrative is not found detailed in one consecutive passage of the Quran, but it's related in a fragmentary manner in a number of different verses. So it's all over the Quran. It's divided. So Muhammadans have found it useful to collect these passages and form them into a consecutive whole by supplying connecting passages in the way that we find it done in the Araisul Majlis or the Kisasul Anbiya. I probably butchered those. Such links are supplied from the traditions of Muhammad. So when we compare the narrative accepted by Muslims with the account of the same legendary occurrence contained in the Midrash Rabbah of the Jews, it becomes clear that the latter is the source of the Muslim account. So the Midrash is the source of this account. It's not from the Bible. It's actually legendary tales from the Midrash.
Yeah. And it's amazing. Muhammad rejected these books in the Quran, where he stated they write the books with their hands, which is not from Allah. This is exactly what the Jewish people wrote by their hand, and it's not from Allah. And he's copying their writings, which he is confessing to us in the Quran is not from Allah, and he inserted all over his Quran. Hello, my Muslim friends. Your Muhammad, your Allah rejected the writings of the Jewish people by their hands, which is not the Torah. And in the same time, he's copying all of the stories in the Quran.
Yeah, and also now in the 21st century, 2 billion Muslims worship the Midrash. So they're going to be a bit shocked when they find out.
Yeah. I mean, I think how many times, who else on YouTube has been going in depth through these sources that actually come from out, where the Quran sources ultimately stem from, or where the Quran ultimately stems from, what its sources are. I mean, there's not a whole lot of that. So hopefully we're one of the first and one of the few to do this. Also, later on, he explains the potential origin of the name Azhar for Abraham's father, which is also quite interesting. Azhar, Abraham's father, he says, used to make idols and used to give them to Abraham to sell them. Abraham used to say, who will buy what will injure him and will not benefit him? Afterwards, when Allah the Most High commanded Abraham to summon his people to monotheism, he invited his father. However, he refused and he invited his people. Accordingly, when the matter got abroad concerning him and reached Nimrod, son of Cush, who was king of that country, Nimrod took Abraham, the friend of Allah, and threw him into a great fire. The fire became cool and safe unto him, and Abraham came forth from the fire after some days, many days. And then certain men of his people believed on him.
Once again, in the story, according to the scholars of Islam, actually Abraham's mama went and visited her son in the fire to have a cup of hot tea, I guess. And she said, oh, son, can you ask Allah to allow me to come in and I will not be furnished? She said, sure. And he invited her and she went with him and she visited with him. That is Abraham's mama visited with her son in the fire. I mean, literally, when Allah said in the Quran, all fire be cold and peace, the scholars of Islam write you sentences and sentences about, if Allah did not say peace, then Abraham would have died from the coldness of the fire. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. You have to use your imagination. So the story is a legend. Muhammad copied in the Quran, and the scholars of Islam add.
The heat can be very cold. I mean, it's global warming time. Like, look here. I'm having to wear this jacket because it is freezing outside. Okay, because of global warming, right? Sure. So yeah, you can get freezing heat.
Exactly. You got the point. Yeah, you got the point.
Yeah. So this is the shortest Arabic account we have, and we proceed to translate the most important part. Now, notice some of this stuff. Notice here, he is using a translation from 1831. This stuff has been known for 200 years to be a bunch of nonsense.
But why nobody ever printed it in the last 50 years or 40 years? I mean, why nobody talk about that except now?
Usama, Catherine doesn't want to convert. She doesn't want to become a Muslim. She doesn't want to say the Shahada after everything we've done here.
I know. Hey, you know what? Just wait, sister. We're almost close to the end of our study. Within the next 10 years, when we get to the end, for sure you will say the Shahada.
How have we not convinced Catherine that this is clearly the word of Allah?
She, first of all, she's a half brain. She's a woman, according to Muhammad. Maybe if she can borrow another half from another lady, she will get it.
I think maybe she's got too much brain. That's why. If she were a half brain, she'd convert.
She could have believed by now, huh?
Yeah, she could have believed. But
backwards. Yeah. Man, I got it wrong. I misunderstood. I mean,
Yeah, but
okay.
it's just interesting that people have been studying this. I mean, this is 1831, and that's when it was written or published, which means it was in the process of being researched prior. So
Yeah.
for 200 years, people have been looking at this and going, huh?
But I am thankful to the Lord because now we got all the reasons for this information to be spread. And all what we do is now we open these books after 200 years of being written, or literally 196 years, if you want to be exactly. And then it's up to our audience to share it with others, like it and share it, so we can get this information out. Otherwise, it will be another 100 years for the world to know it. So no excuse. We got the internet, we got the phones, we got the computers. We can go ahead and get it done.
Yeah, I reckon that the reason that Islam has been paying off universities for the last 50 years or so is for this reason, because all of these things would have been held by academics. And the moment that Islam starts to come to the West, that's when people would start asking questions. So I think the reason they have been sponsoring universities is so that these things are not discussed, they are
Sure.
kept away from the public eye. And here we are, not submitting and going through the sources.
Amen. Amen.
Right. I mean, any scholar worth their salt. I mean, if German and French and English scholars 200 years ago in the 1830s knew that this was questionable, you'd think that, if they knew then and were explaining all of the stuff back then you'd think modern scholars would take a hint, but no. So we go here to this Araisul Majlis. There we read that Abraham was brought up in a cave with no knowledge of the true God. I'm African, right? And I wasn't even raised in a cave.
No, see, I'm African, but I was raised in a pyramids.
Yeah, I was about to say. So yeah, I mean, props to you. You like special, but yeah. One night he came forth and beheld the glory of the stars and was so impressed that he resolved to acknowledge the stars as his gods. The account then proceeds as follows, incorporating as many as possible of the passages of the Quran which deal with the subject. So now they're trying to make, what's that version of the Bible, the Peshitta or something, the Peshitta, which tries to harmonize the various different versions of the story. So now they're trying to harmonize this. When therefore the night overshadowed him, he saw a star, and he said, "This is my Lord." Then when it set, "I love not those that set." Then when he saw the moon rising, he said, "This is my Lord." And when it set, he said, "Truly, if my Lord guide me not, I shall assuredly be of the people who go astray." Then when he saw the sun rising, he said, "This is my Lord, this is greater." For he saw that its light was grander. When it therefore it set, he said, "O my people, truly I am guiltless of the polytheism which you hold. Truly I turn my face to him who hath formed the heavens and the earth as a Hanif, and I am not one of the polytheists." When therefore, so they say his father used to make idols, and then when therefore he associated Abraham with himself, he began to make the idols and to give them over to Abraham to sell. Abraham, peace be upon him, therefore goes off with them and cries aloud, "Who will buy what injures and does not benefit?"
Yeah.
So nobody bought anything from Abraham because he was a bad salesman who was insulting his gods.
Yeah. What is the story written in the Quran about the sun and the moon and the stars? Let me.
It's a very short passage, though, just a couple of verses.
I know, but what happened, Muhammad put in the wrong order. And according to the legend, it makes more sense. I'm going to tell you why in a second here. فلما رأى الشمس. Yeah, go to Quran chapter 6 if you don't mind.
Quran chapter 6.
And verse 76.
So when the night covered him, he saw a planet. He said, "This is my Lord." So when it set, he said, "I do not love the setting one." So when he saw the moon rising, he said, "This is my Lord." When it set, he said, "If my Lord does not guide me, I will be of the erring people." When he saw the sun rising, he said, "This is my Lord, this is bigger." When it set, he said, "O my people, surely I am innocent of what you partner."
Okay, so this is the source. Of course, here is the story of the Quran, and we know where it come from. But according to the legend, his mama took she was pregnant, and she does not want Abraham to die for whatever reason. So she went to that cave and she burst Abraham there, and she left him. And she came back 9 days later. When she came back 9 days later, actually, he was drinking milk from the finger of Angel Jibril, and how he grew quick in these 8-9 days, and he became that big, strong boy. And he went out of the cave at night. So in the legend, it makes sense, even though the whole story is a legend, it's a made up, because he saw the star at night and he saw the moon at night, and in the following day he saw the sun. Now in the Quran, he's a grown-up boy. I mean, what logic does he ever see the moon shine, bright shine during the day? Of course, he have seen many times the sun early in the morning when the sun rises, the light of the moon disappeared. And so the logic of the nonsense story of the legend, yeah, is a little boy. He walked out of the moon 8 days old or 9 days old, and he saw these
The
things.
weather was different back then, Usama. Just like this is a 9-year-old in Arabia. You see, back then, this was what 9-year-olds looked like. And the sun and the moon would come out in the daytime and the nighttime. And
Yeah,
but this is what a 9-year-old looks like. So yeah, things were different back then.
Belly dancer will not help the Muslim in that case. But what I'm saying is, according to the story of the Quran, it does not make any sense, because that young man, Abraham, have seen many days and many nights, and he knows that when the sun rises, the moon disappeared because the bright shine of the sun, and there was no reason for him to make up the story. That's why the scholars of Islam will lie in their interpretations. They tell you he literally did not worship the sun.
He came to the cave, and then he was like, "There's a big light in the sky. What is that?" And he goes, I know. That's the, he knew exactly what they were after living in a cave.
Sure. But according to the scholars of Islam who trying to make sense out of the Quran, not realizing that it is a copy of a legend written for between 200 to 500 after Christ, that they will tell you he never actually worshiped any of these. This is just a made-up saying to teach his people that there is no reason for you to worship the sun and the moon and the stars. When the Quran contradicts itself in another place, they actually were worshiping idols, not the sun and the moon and the stars, because he broke the idols, Lloyd. He did not break the sun and the moon and the star. You see, the problem is no consistencies in the teaching of the Quran. Was people of Abraham worship the sun and the moon and the star, or were they worshiping some idols whom he broke with his hammer, big hammer? Anyway, move on, brother. Move on.
Usama, you're confusing me with the facts now.
Well, I'm sorry. I take it back. Throw it out. Never mind.
So when the statues were unsaleable, he took them to a river. He smote them on the head and said to them, "Drink my bad bargain," in mockery of his people and of their false religion and ignorance, to such an extent that his reviling and mocking them became notorious among his people in the town. So his people disputed with him in regards to his religion. Then he said to them, "Do you dispute with me about God? And he hath guided me." And that was our reasoning which we brought to Abraham against these people. We raise many steps whomsoever we will. Verily the Lord is all wise and all knowing. So Abraham invited his father to embrace the religion. Accordingly he said, "O my father, why dost thou worship that which heareth not, nor seeth, nor doth profit thee at all?" And then his father refused assent to that which Abraham invited him. Now this makes me think, from a narrative point of view, this is why Muhammad's father didn't accept Islam, because they just copied this story from Abraham's father not accepting, because Abraham's father was a pagan, and therefore Muhammad had to have exactly the same problem, because Muhammad was the new Abraham.
That's actually very interesting. Actually, I mean, think about this. These guys they were making up all of these different stories, copying and pasting, and they made up stories about all of the characters that they came across. Those are the people that we trust when they tell us the story about Muhammad. Instead of concluding exactly the same, they made up stories about their own prophet, because that's what we see across the board. That's one thing. But another one, Lloyd, you've read this. Does it say anywhere when Allah was meant to give Abraham his 10 books?
No.
Interesting.
Actually, Yeah,
Yeah.
the 10 books of Abraham in the Quran never exist, except in the scholar's imagination. That's all.
But the thing is that last Wednesday, I did a different series. You weren't available, remember? And we went through some of the older. So in Manichaeism, I think it is from Mani, from the 3rd, 4th century or whatever, the whole Gnostic guy who claimed he was like the new Messiah and whatnot. In his belief system, he believed that these people were given books. So this idea is lifted out of previous Gnostic religions, Gnostic pagan religions that were in that region, that were still extant in that time. And so that idea was imported into Islam as well. So this idea was very common amongst the Muslims 100, 150 years ago. But then obviously with new history and people asking questions and more in learning, the Muslims just quietly dropped that whole idea. So now there were things that Western authors who studied Islam, missionaries who learned Arabic, who learned Persian, who went to these countries, lived there for decades, who stayed amongst these people to convert them, learned the language, wrote multiple books. They said, look, these are the stories the Muslims are telling. These stories are gone today simply because it's too embarrassing for the Muslims to talk about them.
Yeah.
Right. So about basically 150 years ago, the Muslims were told that there were 104 books revealed by God. 103 had been corrupted or lost, but the Quran is good. Trust me, bro, it's perfectly preserved. Now they have just changed the story, and it's only the Torah, the Psalms, and the Injil that have been lost and corrupted. But trust me, the Quran is fine. It's still better than corrupting 103 books. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, even Odin was very surprised when I said that Muslims had the idea that there were 104 books, 10 given to Abraham, books given to Seth, books given to this guy, that guy, this guy, a whole bunch of books given to people. And Odin was like, I've never heard of that. I was like, yeah, well, I mean, Muslims have stopped telling that story, but it's in their sources.
Yeah. The funny thing is, Idris, Enoch have more books than anybody else.
Yeah, and then also Muhammad has 201 names. Allah has only 99.
Yeah, special. Because he's special.
Allah is greater than him. I mean, this is just, I mean, seriously, you can see the story is changing all the time. These Muslims are just forgetting things very conveniently. So anyway, so my thought is that because Abraham's father didn't accept Yahweh, so they had to have Muhammad's father do the same, because they needed to parallel that idea. Abraham proclaimed aloud to his people his rejection of their worship and declared his own religion. And he said, have you seen that which you worship, you and your fathers, the ancients? For truly they are hostile to me. And then, of course, he worships the Lord of the world. And they said, thou meanest Nimrod. And he said, no, him who has created me and him who therefore guideth me. And that matter accordingly was spread abroad until it reached Nimrod. Okay. Then he called him and said to him, O Abraham, hast thou seen thy God who hath sent thee, and to whose worship thou dost invite men, and whose power thou recordest, and on account thereof dost magnify him above all others? What is he? And Abraham said, my Lord is he who preserveth alive and causeth to die. Nimrod said, I preserve alive and I cause to die. Abraham said, how do you preserve alive and cause to die? And he said, I take two men to whom death is due in my jurisdiction. Then I slay one of them, thus I cause him to die. And I pardon the other and let him go. So I have preserved him alive. Abraham said to him thereupon, truly God bringeth the sun from the east. Do you therefore bring it from the west? Oh man, that's writing straight out of
the whole thing. I was going to ask you, Lloyd, are you reading from the Quran right now, or are you reading from the legend?
Islam is true.
No, the book we're reading right now, in that page here.
Are you saying that the Deen ul Haq, the religion of truth, these people who tell the truth, the Quran teaches them not to lie, are you saying they're going to write a mistake here?
Lloyd, answer my question. The verses you just read, these few sentences, the last few sentences, are you reading it from the Quran or from the legend? Because that is what the Quran says. No kidding.
I don't think this is in the Quran. I mean, I recall reading that book with you, and I don't.
No. You're wrong. This is the Quran. Watch this. Watch this. Yuhyi. Okay, can you do me a favor? Yuhyi wa yumit. Okay, go to Quran chapter 2 and verse 258. Quran chapter 2, Al-Baqarah. The Baqarah, and you go to verse 258. So you're copying from the Quran, man, or the copy is copying from you. One of the two.
Have you not seen him who disputed with Abraham about his Lord, that Allah had given him the kingdom, when Abraham said, "My Lord is he who causes life and death"? Oh, yes, of course. But it's not the whole thing. Surely I give life and cause death.
Now let's go to the interpretation of the scholars. It will read the rest of the words you said.
Yeah, no. So partly this is alluded to, but the details are filled in within the
scholars.
The scholars, yeah.
Al-Tabari, Ibn Kathir all say the same thing.
Yeah, but you know what? He barely refers to Tabari and Ibn Kathir. Do you know that? What's odd is, in these older sources, they rarely go to these major names. They go to other sources which Muslims at that time clearly thought were more relevant, which I do find really odd.
And it's what's amazing is Muhammad copied from the legends, and his scholars continue to copy the rest of the legends to make sense about what Muhammad put in his Quran. That is the problem. And that's why sometimes you see they add too much. Now you gonna add more water to the muddy Quran anyway.
Analytical apologetics, analytical apex says, what if Muhammad was a prophet of sorts, but his teachings were corrupted? You should note that in the Quran, prophecy is of the Jews. That's according to Allah. So Muhammad then would have to be a Jew, just so that Muslims know. Hey, Thunderous, how's it going?
Hey, guys. Sorry I'm a little bit late.
That's all right. Yeah. Any thoughts or comments on what we've discussed so far before I head further?
I've only just started listening to the show about 5 minutes ago, Lloyd. I came in late from work, so I'm sure I'll catch up, but I'll let you guys carry on.
Okay, yeah. We're just going through the sources of the Quran, obviously. So the story goes on to inform us that the custom of the tribe to which Abraham belonged was to hold a great festival once a year, and at this time, everyone went out of the city. And he says this may be a confused reference to the Jewish Feast of the Tabernacles. Okay? And so before leaving the city, the citizens had made some food ready. Accordingly, right? Kids a bit spoiled here. And so when we return, the gods will have blessed our food and we shall eat. And therefore, Abraham beheld the idols and the food which was before them. He said unto them in mockery, will you not eat? And when they did not answer, he said, what is the matter with you? Will you not speak? And then he turned upon them, striking a blow with his right hand. And he began to dash them in pieces with an axe, which he held in his hand, until there remained none but the biggest, on the neck of which he hung the axe. Then he went out. Such is the statement of the honored and glorified one. So he broke them in pieces, except the largest of them, that perchance they might come back to it and find what it had done. When the people came back from their festival to the house of their gods and saw them in that condition, they said, who hath done this to our gods? And verily he is one of the unjust. And they said, we heard a youth who is called Abraham make mention of them. We think he did this. Okay, he does mention Jalalain here, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So he does mention Al-Jalalain. So, of course, yeah.
And the story as it is already in the Quran, as it is, word for word. I'm just amazed.
Yep. And so Nimrod hears about it and he says, bring him then to the eyes of men, that perchance they may bear witness against him. Right? So when they brought him forward, they said unto him, hast thou done this unto our gods, O Abraham? And Abraham said, on the contrary, the biggest God, the biggest idol did it. He was angry at your worshipping these little idols along with him, since he's bigger than them. Therefore he dashed them in pieces. Do you then inquire of them if they can speak? So ask them then if they can speak. And the prophet, may Allah bless and preserve him, hath said, Abraham told only 3 lies, all of them on behalf of God Most High. Interesting. So, told multiple lies on behalf of Allah. Very interesting. Yeah.
But with this thing about breaking the idols, I think Abraham was wrong, because those idols actually on the day of judgment, you see, they are going to speak for Abraham and the people, and they are going to intercede. I know, sorry, I'm thinking about the black stone and the Quran. Sorry. Let's keep going.
So,
You see,
can I ask?
this this story is all about how these things do nothing. But then in Islam, they have introduced that the Quran appears as a living thing on the Day of Judgment and the black stone. Do you see like the level of hypocrisy in there, or is it just me?
Can I just ask as well? I mean, I think that the reason why they've got Abraham as a liar is probably derived from the moments where Abraham was in a conversation with Pharaoh over Sarah, his wife, and Abraham had discreetly hidden the fact that Sarah, his wife, he claimed that she was his sister, which she technically was, but didn't disclose that she was also his wife. So I think that's possibly where they derive the Abraham is a liar from, because they've got some kind of justification to do it there. But also, is this the same Nimrod that they're referring to with reference to the Tower of Babel? So we've got a how old Abraham or how old?
Yeah, we'll
Nimrod?
get to that. Yeah, he does raise all these points. He raises this. I mean, but also this thing about reference to Sarah, she is my sister, that comes out of nowhere. That just drops suddenly.
But that is a biblical reference, so isn't it? Because that's the situation.
Yeah, no, they do discuss that. He will get to that point as well. Yeah, and just keep that in mind, because, yeah. So basically, Abraham tells them, you are unjust because you worship the small images along with the big one. Then they were turned upside down in their astonishment at this matter. And they knew that the idols do not speak and do not take by violence. Therefore they said, truly thou knowest that these do not speak. Therefore, when the argument which Abraham had brought against them had confuted them, he said to them, do you then worship instead of God that which doth not profit you at all and doth not harm you? Shame on you and on that which you worship instead of Allah. And when this argument overcame them, they could not answer it. And they said, burn ye him and aid your gods if you are active men. And then Abdullah ibn Umar had said that the person who urged them to burn Abraham in the fire was a Kurd.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing they kind of like didn't like the Kurds at that point in time.
No, it's actually the interpretation of some of the scholars of Islam is he is a man who created or who invented the caterpillar, because they tried to throw Abraham many times and the fire were burning the people. Then he created the caterpillar and he put some rocks in it and throws the rocks and it worked. And then they put Abraham and he throw Abraham in the fire through this by this caterpillar.
Yeah, but also the prophets are supposed to be pure, and now Abraham lies. The guy's a regular George Washington here.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, and then Shebul Jabai says that his name was Danun. We have the name of the guy, believe it or not. And accordingly, Allah caused the earth to split open for him, and he was swallowed up until the resurrection day. True.
So you got Korah there then. So they've got that account from ground splitting up for where Moses was challenged by Korah and his authority.
Exactly. And he says here, doubtless reminiscent of the fate of Korah from Numbers. Yeah. Good call.
Copy and paste. Different stories, mix them all together and put them in one place.
But this is what I've said for many years now, that when you look at an account in the Quran or Islam, what you've got to do is go to somewhere in the Bible or somewhere in the Talmud and find just even a sentence. Because what you'll find is Islam is very good at taking an account here and account there, removing the names, but keeping the incident or a partial incident and then taking another partial incident historically from maybe 200 or 300 years later and then juxtaposing them together like a piece of Lego. And that's how you get Islam and accounts like these.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you have to remember now, all this can be destroyed by simply reading one passage, one paragraph in the Bible. So if you go to Genesis account, you see that Abraham and his father and his wife and Lot's wife traveled together from the land of the Chaldeans, which is the Muhammad misunderstood it. He saw the fire of Chaldeans when it is the land Ur al-Chaldean. It's not the fire or the light of
He's
the
going to
Chaldeans.
talk about that as well. He's going to get to that, and he goes into depth on that. He explains it very nicely.
Oh, that's very good. But anyway, so Abraham's father died in Haran, and he was not, none of what he said in these legends or what Muhammad put in the Quran fit with the true biblical account that Abraham's father actually believed, like Abraham believed, and he traveled with him, but he did not make it to the land of the promised land.
You know, point that someone made, it's like, was the Quran then written in Arabia? Was there a lot of Jews in Arabia? Or was this written in Iraq? Did it come from that period when the Abbasids were around? And then, of course, because then you had all these Jewish academies and the Muslim academies, you know, the yeshivas and the madrasas next to each other. I mean, one has to wonder, you know.
You talk about the original Bible?
No, the Quran. I mean, the
Quran,
source,
yeah.
like the geography, the location for these. So anyway, he goes on. It is recorded in tradition that Abraham was preserved through saying, Allah is sufficient for me, and he's an excellent guardian. And Allah said, O fire, become cool and safe unto Abraham. We now proceed to compare this with the narrative, that which is contained in the Midrash Rabbah of the Jews. Terah was a maker of idols. Once he went out somewhere and seated Abraham as salesman in place of himself. A person would come wishing to purchase, and he and others would say 50 or 60 years, and he, Abraham, would say to him, woe to that man who is 60 years of age and wisheth to worship a thing a few days old. Okay. Oh, sorry. Abraham would ask them, how old are you? And they would say, I'm 50 or 60. And he, the other, would become ashamed and would go his way. Once a woman came carrying in her hand a plate of wheat flour. She said to him, here, set this before them. He arose, took a staff in his hand, and broke them all in pieces. Then he gave the staff into the hand of the one that was the biggest. When his father came, he said to him, who has done this unto them? And he, Abraham, said to him, what is hidden from thee? A woman came, bringing with her a plate of wheat and flour, and said, here, set this before them. I set it before them. This one said, I shall eat first. And that one said, I shall eat first. This one, which is the biggest among them, arose, took a staff, and broke them. And the father said to him, why do you tell me a fable? Do these understand? And Abraham said to him, and do not thine ears hear what thy lips speaketh? And Terah seized him and delivered him over to Nimrod. And Nimrod said to him, let us worship the fire. And Abraham said unto him, and let us worship the waters, which extinguish the fire. Nimrod said to him, let us worship the waters. And Abraham said to him, if so, let us worship the cloud, which brings the waters. And Nimrod said to him, let us worship the cloud. And Abraham said to him, if so, let us worship the wind that drives away the cloud. And Nimrod said, let us worship the wind. And Abraham said to him, and let us worship man who resists the wind. And if thou bandiest words with me, lo, I will worship naught but the fire. Lo, I will cast thee into the midst of it, and let the God whom thou worship come and deliver thee from it. And Abraham went down into the furnace of fire and was delivered. It is perfectly clear that the Mohammedan fable is borrowed directly from the Jewish, although it is expanded and elaborated upon.
And it's like the styles of writing.
Yeah.
Of these, it's the same style of Muhammad's writing about anything in the Quran. I mean, literally, I can show you 10 different stories of 10 different topics following the same message, the same story. And here's another catch. I do not know if you noticed this or not. In the Bible, Abraham's name was never given until Abraham had his son Isaac, because Abraham is the real name, and that is the father of one. Abraham is the father of many. And in the Bible, God changed his name when he was 100 years old. But when you read the stories of the Quran and the stories of the legends, they both made the same mistake. They called Abraham when he was a feta, a young man, a teenager, or when he was 50, or when he was 70, or when he was 90. All that is a great internal evidence that they do not know what they're talking about.
Well, he says here that clearly someone told him the story, but the guys who either Muhammad made changes, or he heard it badly, or remembered it badly, or made whatever, or the Jews who told it to him themselves weren't very educated.
Yeah. That's
Usama,
external evidence. They were not educated about the real biblical names for these characters in the right time where the name changed.
Yeah, JC?
I
well,
would
look,
challenge you on that slightly, Lloyd, where the Jews probably weren't that educated. I think you've got quite a good line of reasoning there, but I would counter by saying I think the Jews were a little bit more sophisticated than that and possibly trolling him. One of the reasons why I say that, well, there's two. One is the fact that he had a reputation of being all ears.
The ear, yeah.
That gives, for me personally, a good idea that maybe they were trolling him. And the second account is when they were talking about, there was something that only a prophet would know. They asked a question, what would be the first meal in paradise? And I think there was two other questions. And
whale liver or something like that, whale pate.
Yes. And only Muhammad, for me, it was a case of, well, if only a prophet knows, then how did these people asking the question know what the answers were in the first place? So that, for me, is also an inclination that Muhammad, they were trolling Muhammad by asking him, yeah, so I would go along with the trolling. I'm not disputing what you're saying, Lloyd. I think what you've got to say there is true, but I think there's a little bit more going on.
Right. JC?
I'll just add to what Usama said that, look, okay, we granted they didn't get the name of Abraham right when he was young, but at least they got the name of his father right.
Haran. Tarih.
Well,
Azar in the Quran, yeah.
They'll explain it. They'll explain it in a minute. He actually goes through the name, where he thinks the change came from. So, but he does say here, what is interesting is that the story in the Quran shows that Momo believed it to be perfectly well known to and accepted by all his followers, because these stories are told in such a way that they are thought to be familiar. So it's not this. So Thunderous and May. It's not just that Muhammad was being trolled. It's just that this seems to be the version of the story that was common at the time. So it's like they had. It could well be they had a bad version of the story that had just become the norm.
But so not once, Lloyd, not once Muhammad gave accurate story compared to what is wrong, what is written wrong in the legend. He always follows the norm, the famous story of his days.
So yeah, so there's exaggeration, embellishment. There's a little bit of changing, but yeah. But he says, yeah, this was probably known in Arabia, right, as so many other tales what Abraham were. And it's contained in the Midrash Rabbah. And he said it's not to prove that Muhammad plagiarized it, but to show that the story in its main details was current amongst the Jews at an earlier time, and that either this or some similar form of the fable must have been the source from which the Arabs derived their knowledge, right? And he says it is hardly likely that Muhammad forgot to verify the tale by consulting his Jewish friends, who would tell him that it was contained in some of their books, and thus confirm his faith in its truth. So they possibly did troll him then, if we read it that way. We notice, however, that in the Quran, the name of Abraham's father is stated to have been Azar, and not Azar, and not Terah, as in Genesis. But Eastern Jews sometimes called him Zara, or Zara, from which the Arabic form may have been corrupted. Or again, Muhammad may have learned the name in Syria because Eusebius probably derived the form of the name Asar, which he uses. Yeah. So Eusebius uses this Greek form, I think, Asar. Modern Persian Muslims often write the name, what is this here, Usama?
Azar. That's like the Quran.
Pronouncing it, however, just as it is pronounced in Arabic, although the original Persian pronunciation was Adhar, nearly the same as the form used by Eusebius. So this word in Persian meant fire, and this was the title of the angel who was supposed to preside over that element, one of the good creatures of Ormazd. There may in fact have been some attempt made to win reverence for Abraham amongst the Zoroastrians or the Magians by identifying his father with this good genius, Izad, of fire. So he might have modified this tale to try to win over the support of the Persians. What do you guys think?
Weren't the Persians known for fire worship? Wasn't that one of their prominent gods? And that's why we see a lot of fire in Islam. I think there's one accounts where, when on the Day of Judgment, people will be walking over a bridge that has the width of a razor blade, if I remember correctly, and below the bridge is fire. So the eternal torment with fire, clearly, well, from what I can see, is a derivative of Zoroastrianism.
Yeah.
Right. And Lloyd, there is the spreadsheet you've used before, which actually showed the words that were borrowed from different language. I believe there were quite a few from Persian, right? I know even paradise, or the word that makes into English as paradise, is as well used in the Quran. So it is attested that they actually took words from there.
Let me find here. Okay, wait. So if we go, so let me check here. So from the Persian, 88 words. No, this is back in 1939, right? So 88 words known then. So we have at least that number, and there'll be others. Like I think you can add a Vestic to it. I'm not sure, but you've got at least this number here. You know,
and Greek as well. So if they actually took some of the writings in Greek and then they just transliterated it into Arabic, that is now quite likely, because otherwise the name is wrong. It didn't take it from the Hebrew.
Yeah, it could well be. I mean, you also got Old Persian here, 11 words from Old Persian. So yeah, there's a number of. I mean, this would explain the change in the sound, because he goes on to say that the sh sound in the Hebrew often becomes in Arabic s.
Yeah.
He actually says that the sound does change.
Shin and sin are always changeable. Yeah.
Yeah, and he goes on. Let me just find. For they say that Muslims want to say that Muhammad did not borrow this narrative from the Jews, but he receives it by inspiration through the angel Gabriel. Yet, since the Jews who are Abraham's descendants have accepted this narrative on the authority of their own traditions, it must be confessed that their testimony forms a confirmation of the teaching of the Quran on the subject. Muslims have tried to make this argument, like they'll take the story of the clay birds and so, but look, it's in an ancient book. Yeah, from a 5th century Gnostic gospel.
Yeah, and then you know that most of the stories of Abraham we talk about here, actually the 2nd, 3rd century, 200 after Christ plus. So how can it be a revealed book to Muhammad in the 7th century when it was written on paper on the 3rd century? It makes no sense.
And it was known to be. It was known to be a fantastical myth. It was known to be a myth.
Exactly.
And not in a holy text either. It was a story about a holy text, but it was not the holy text.
And here's the deal: some of the Jewish scholars said, if you don't believe in the Talmud or the Mishnah, you're not a Jew. And if you believe in all of it, you're not sane. You're crazy. So. I don't know. How can you tell me this is a legend? This is a word of Allah, which the scholars of the Jewish scholars said. If you believe in all that, you're crazy. So to believe in Islam, that is a revelation of Allah, the Quran, the revelation of Allah, you are crazy according to their own writings.
I mean, so exactly. So now the only reliable traditions of the Jews which relate to the time of Abraham are in the Pentateuch, and it is hardly necessary to say that this childish tale is not found there. And he says, it is evident from Genesis that Nimrod lived many generations before Abraham.
Yeah.
And Nimrod is not mentioned by name in the Quran, but his name occurs, as we have seen, in this tale about Abraham being cast into the fire, both in the Muslim tradition and in their commentaries on the Quran, as well as in the Jewish Midrash Rabbah.
Sure.
And the anachronism is as great as if some ignorant person were to say that Alexander the Great had cast the Turkish Sultan Uthman into the fire, not knowing how much time had elapsed between the two.
Yeah. I mean, just for the Quran never to give us detail about any of this. Have you heard the one who? Well, if you know it is Namrud and your scholars say it's Namrud, why did not Allah say, have you heard of Namrud? Who argue with Abraham? No, he never. He did not know, or he on purpose just make it built to the unknown, so he does not get himself in trouble if the story is not true.
Yeah, Thunderous, JC.
Well, I just think that these stories, they're very cleverly compiled in such a way that when the reader goes into the narrative, there's just enough information before you start asking serious questions. So it just touches on the story, then as quickly as they go into the account, they quickly leave the account. So
Catherine says I'm just being picky.
Yeah, you're picky. Trust me. If we are picky, we could be in that chapter for the next 6 weeks.
So yeah, so this is interesting as well. This might be interesting to talk about. So I'll go in some depth. The whole story of Abraham's being delivered from the fire is founded upon an ignorant mistake made by an ancient Jewish commentator. To explain this, we must refer to the Targum of Jonathan ben Uziel. This writer found Ur of the Chaldees mentioned as the place where Abraham dwelt when God first called him to leave home and country and to move to the land of Canaan.
Amen.
Now, this city is the place that is at present time known by the name of Muqayyar. The word Ur or Uru in ancient Babylonian meant a city. It occurs again in the name of Jerusalem, still in Arabic called Urushalim, the city of the God of peace. but just that Urushalim, right? The city of Shalim. Shalim was at the time the Canaanite god, which was a star god. You know, so interesting. It was a pagan solar deity, not solar deity, astronomical deity. But Jonathan had no knowledge of Babylonian, and he imagined that Ur must have a meaning similar to that of the Hebrew word Or, meaning light, which in Aramaic means fire. Hence, he rendered Genesis 15, verse 7 as, I am the Lord who brought thee out of the furnace of fire of the Chaldees. So that's a mistake made.
That is in the translation, not in the accurate telling of the story. And Muhammad obviously is a big ear, heard it, and he made it that beautifully well done in his Quran.
Yeah, so also in his commentary on Genesis 9, verse 28, he writes, when Nimrod cast Abraham into the furnace of fire because he would not worship his idols, it came to pass that the fire was not given permission to injure him. Now, that's interesting. Fire was not given permission because in the Quran, you always see these references to, I do so with the permission, or Jesus did so with the permission of, you know.
Yeah, every single.
There's really borrowing of certain context here. We see the story arose from a wrong explanation of a single word and has no foundation in fact. Whether Jonathan was the first person to make the mistake is very doubtful. He may very probably have accepted the idea from others. The result is the same. This puts us in... Okay, so I'll move on here. It is indeed strange that one claiming divine inspiration should have accepted the fable based upon such a mistake as literally true, and thus should in many different places introduce portions of the tale into a book which he professed that he received from God himself through an angel, Gabriel, and should have taught his followers to believe it and to consider that the agreement between the Quran and the Jewish scriptures, in which he erroneously, mistakenly supposed that the tale was found in this and similar matters, was a proof that he was divinely commissioned as a prophet. I mean, I rest my case here.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Hey, if I may, now I'm thinking that when the Quran says the book confirms the previous scriptures, it's sounding more and more like it's confirming the Midrash.
It does seem to be. It's confirming exactly. I mean, but I think this is definitive. I mean, this statement he makes here is definitive. He's saying, an angel gave me this story. God sent that angel to me, and this is the literal truth from the mouth of God. You have to believe it, and it's quite literally based on tales he got from the Midrash.
this is the problem, isn't it? Because if you consider the narrative of the Quran, which is that this is an uncreated speech of Allah, which is on eternal tablets in heaven, you have to ask the question, when you look at certain stories, then how did they come to be found in books written post-Jesus and before Muhammad, when there's no account of any prophet or any book written post-Jesus and before Muhammad for the 540 years that you have the time difference between the two prophets? So you have to ask the question, how, or Islam has to answer the question then, how on earth do these stories that are found in eternal tablets in heaven get transmitted to earth between Jesus and before Muhammad? Because that's where the sources are. How and then
Which
why is it
brought these stories to earth?
Exactly my point. Exactly my point. Because when you go to the narrative of 124,000 prophets, when you take away Adam and you take away Jesus and you take away Muhammad, you're left with 123,997. No prophet is ever mentioned post Jesus and pre Muhammad in the Islamic narrative. So all the other 123,000 prophets are before Jesus. So it doesn't make any sense that these stories were in eternal tablets and they were revealed between the 33 AD and 570 AD, between that 540 year period.
You know, you spoke of like tablets in heaven. I can tell you something, this is giving me a headache. So I'm just glad there's tablets on earth, except this box is empty, I just discovered, because this is giving me a headache just reading this stuff. You know, this ibuprofen, this is... because I'm going to need this. This is killing me, man. This is just killing me.
Yeah.
I mean, this is hysterically funny. I mean, this is just ridiculous.
Absolutely. I wish I have access to that book when I was working on my books. I literally did my best, Kathy, to tell from all the other sources. But here's everything I needed in one book, but Lloyd did not tell me.
You could have asked me. You know, everybody knows. What? You could have asked me.
Well, but I never met you 10 years. Actually, I wrote my book 15 years ago. But you know how hard it is for me to dig into the Quran, find out the scholar's interpretation, and try to find out where this come from 15 years ago before I have access to that book.
Yeah, but the crazy thing is, German, French, English scholars were writing about this 200 years ago. JC, you were going to say something?
It's just that it really should have been common knowledge, but for some reason, we just take it for granted. Oh, no, this guy was a false prophet and he told the stories. Instead of saying, what did this guy actually say? And then go to the sources. We've all been told the same 2 or 3, Alexander the Great, the Sleepers in the Cave, and the pseudo-gospels. But it's like the whole thing, and not just in the Quran. When then we go to the tafsirs and to the hadiths, we see that people are taking all of these crazy stories. It's absolutely insane. Yes.
It's interesting as well that when you look at his history and certain famous figures of the past, say George Washington or Winston Churchill, you often have to ask, because they've made very critical comments about Muhammad or the influence of Muhammad or Muhammadan or Islam. They couldn't have come to their conclusions just based on the Quran alone. So these sources could well be the books that they were reading to get their understanding, not just of the Quran or Allah or Muhammad, but Islam in general, to make the comments that they did. Because you're looking at about the 30, 40, 50 well-known public figures pre-1960 that were making condemning or damning comments about Islam. So these books must have been known to a certain level of people within academia.
So I would have to say yes. And look, academia is filled with a bunch of cowards. And I think it's up to us to talk about this. And hopefully you as the audience will get this book. It's in my archive. Check my description box for a link to the Google archive. Get a copy of Tisdall's book, The Sources of the Quran. Talk about it. Look through it.
Share it.
Post it on social media. Just get the conversation going. Once it's out there in public knowledge, academia cannot ignore it. And Muslims will have to start dealing with it. Ask them, how come all of these comic books and kiddies' tales, which were well known as myths and legends by Jews, are now suddenly, according to Muhammad, the word of Allah sent down from the lips of Allah, from the tablet of Allah, by the angel gibberish. It's like, this makes no sense.
And can I suggest that people do it quick and relay this information as far and wide as you possibly can before the English government turn around and say this is Islamophobic, and you get about 13 people come knocking on your door to arrest you?
The UK. Oh, do you know what? Do you know that the Fabian Society, right? That's the group that had the symbol with the wolf in sheep's clothing, right? 7 Labour prime ministers of the UK were members of the board of the Fabian Society. The current UK prime minister was the secretary or the head of the Fabian Society. He was like the chairman, right? I need to do a talk on that, because the whole Fabian Society, which believed in being the wolf in sheep's clothing to promote socialist, communist ideals, atheist ideals, right? And Starmer was one of them. Starmer was heavily involved, and you got to read the history of that. And the UK is it's literally run by communists. And there were several members now of his cabinet that are all members of the Fabian Society. And Starmer, you got to go through the history. It is scary stuff, how the UK has been infiltrated by the Islamo-commies. It's crazy.
Is that if I'm correct in thinking as well, Lloyd, that's when the title New Labour came from Tony Blair as the next.
Tony Blair was involved with that, yes. So you know what? I should do a show on that. I should do a talk on that. It's actually quite disturbing. And then King Charles. I mean, Allahu Akbar, and let's welcome to Muslims for Eid and Salam Alaikum, and let the Muslims do their service in Windsor Cathedral. But of course, comes to Easter, it's like, nah, I'm not going to do an Easter message because Islam. Come on, man. Everybody knows. Come on, at this point, come on. King Charles, for all intents and purposes, is a Muslim.
And don't forget, that is a man who almost, after lost Diana as a wife, was about to raise Muslim babies out of her by Fayyad from Egypt. I mean, literally, you should have some anger and some jealousy and some bitterness against Muslims who almost got your wife. I think she was pregnant by Fayyad, if I know the story right. So, I mean, why is so much in love with the Muslims and hate of Jesus Christ and the Christians?
Yeah. No, I mean, you got to see some of the stuff that, hold on, hang on. Let me find something for you. Let me find something. This is it here. I will just show this on the screen for a second. Usama, how much time do you say you have? Because you said you don't have a lot of time.
Another 10 minutes, yeah.
King Charles announces he won't deliver any Easter message this year. Now, look, to be honest, Queen Elizabeth only did it once. It's not something that the royalty typically do, but everyone is going, hold on, but King Charles can't shut his freaking mouth about the Quran and Muslims and Islam and Eid and Ramadan and all of that nonsense. So under those circumstances, then you may as well bloody well be the defender of the faith and talk about Easter for that.
Sure.
But back in 1993, King Charles stated, Islam is part of our past and present. It created a modern Europe. Islam teaches us all lessons that Christianity has lost. I think it's safe to say he converted to Islam long ago.
Man.
Well, let me say that actually that is technically correct. It is because of Islam that Europe became what it became, but not as in a good thing. It was because of fighting Islam.
Yep. So, and then Prince William is a little bit of a potential atheist or someone who just couldn't care anymore. So, so what is the purpose of the royal family? If they're not going to stand up for the faith, if they're not going to stand up, the problem is that the Anglican Church is a secular church. It is actually, the title Defender of the Faith was actually a government title bestowed by the government, right? The Anglican Church is literally a theocratic institution because it's a government church. You must understand the history of the whole Anglican Church is a little bit, it's not exactly all squeaky clean, shall we say. So you've got a theocratic institution that's a government mandate. This is not a, shall we say, a purely religious mandate. And there are all sorts of issues there, but the royal family is no longer fit for purpose, that's for sure. So, okay, so let's do 10 minutes on the story of the Queen of Sheba's visit to Solomon. Regarding the origin of this tale, okay, it is taken with only very slight alterations from the second Targum of Esther, which is printed in the Mikrath Gedoloth. Muhammad no doubt believed it to form part of the Jewish scripture, and its absurdities were so much to his taste and that of the Arabs that he introduced it into the Quran in Surah 27. So this is another tale that is in the Quran as literally revelation from Allah, which comes out of another Targum.
God help us.
Yeah. You know, people are saying that Prince Charles should just step down. He should just step down. He just needs to step down and move on. And I think that is true. He needs to just step down and move on if this is the case. Yeah, so shall I continue with this one? And his hosts, composed of jinns and men and birds, were gathered together unto Solomon. And he reviewed the birds, and he said, what hath happened to me that I do not see the hoopoe bird or the hudhud bird? Or is it among the absentees? Oops. Truly I shall punish it with severe punishment. Either I shall slaughter it assuredly, or it shall surely bring me clear proof. Accordingly it delayed not long. Then it said, I am aware of what thou art not aware of. I have seen what thou hast not seen. And I've come to thee from Sheba with sure information. Now he says here, for instance, down below, that in Arabic this is Sabah, right? Because the sh in the Jewish pronunciation becomes s in the Arabic pronunciation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I found a woman who reigneth over them, and who is brought some of everything. And she hath a great throne. And I found her and her people worshipping the sun instead of Allah. And Satan hath made their deeds attractive unto them, and hath turned them aside from the way. Therefore they are not guided aright, so they should worship Allah, who bringeth forth what is concealed in the heavens and the earth, and knoweth what ye hide and what ye reveal. Allah, there is no God but He, the Lord of the great throne. And He said, we shall see whether thou hast spoken truly, or are among the liars. Go thou with this my epistle, and cast it down to her, whatever, to them. And it says here, the Arabic form is sabah, since the Hebrew sh often becomes s in Arabic. So Yesha, which we had last week, could well become Yasa, becomes Isa in Arabic.
Mm-hmm.
Then turn thou away from them, then see what answer they will return. And the queen said, O nobles, verily to me hath a gracious epistle been cast down. It is from Solomon. It is in the name of Allah the Merciful, the Compassionate. Yeah, right. Allah was around in 2000 BC, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Rise not up against me, but come unto me submissively, except, he says down here that in some translations, come to me as a Muslim.
It's the same word.
Yes, I know, but the thing is they're obviously trying to imply that she was a Muslim. You know, Solomon was a Muslim. It's like nonsense. I mean, these Muslims have no shame. They just have absolutely no shame.
But they will tell you, Lloyd, that the word Muslim here, actually, if you got a moderate Muslim, means submitted to Allah, not mean believe in Muhammad.
Yeah, we know exactly what they mean. That's just a nice way to say, you know, we know exactly what they mean.
What we believe does not make any sense. Yeah.
And she said, O nobles, instruct me in my matter. I do not decide a matter until you bear witness. And they said, we are men of strength and of mighty courage, and command belongeth unto thee. Therefore see what thou wilt command. Yeah, I guess that was circular. And she said, when kings enter a city, they destroy it and make humble the most honored of its people. And truly, I do send unto them a gift, and see with what answer the messengers return. So when the messenger came to Solomon, he said, do you increase my goods? Since what God hath brought me is better than what he hath brought you. Nay, you boast of your gift. Return thou to them, for indeed we shall come to them with hosts which they cannot resist, and we shall expel them from the country, humbled, and they shall be small. Yeah, they shall pay the jizya, and they shall
Lloyd, you know, I can destroy all that which is in the Quran just to understand the name Solomon. Solomon, the man of peace. Solomon was a king for 40 years, and the Bible is very clear. And the earth rested for 40 years. There was no war. Solomon never involved in any war. Solomon never killed a person.
Solomon was the head of the jinn army. He had jinns and trolls and giants and dwarves.
Yeah,
and
in the legend, in Muhammad's head, but not in the real biblical teaching. Why God did not chose chose David to build the temple? Because he have a bloody hand. Why God chose Solomon? Because he is a man of peace to build the house of peace. I mean, it's just nonsense.
And also you got to bear in mind that the whoopie bird is actually communicating with Solomon, talking to him, just in the same way that the ants spoke to Solomon as well. So we have another Dr. Doolittle here, a man who's capable of speaking to birds and capable of speaking to insects.
And even if he can talk to the bird, what is the chance for the hudhud, which is a bird does not talk, to carry this long conversation going back and north south? I mean, between Queen of Saba or Sheba and Solomon, the whole thing doesn't make any sense. And we talk about the Afrit a little bit later. It does. It's just so stupid.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got 4 minutes for you. So anyway, but it goes on. And an Ifrit of the jinns said, I shall bring it to thee before thou rises up from thy place. So the Ifrit of the jinns. So Solomon had a jinn chieftain working for him. You know,
and what is her throne? Lloyd,
you're talking about her bed underground.
No, her bed. They're gonna carry her bed from Yemen to Solomon in Israel, in Jerusalem, in a blink of an eye.
If Cain can carry a dead Abel on his back for a year, this demon that lives underground can carry a bed all the way. Yeah. You know?
MashaAllah, MashaAllah.
Does it go on to say that, if I remember the story correctly, does not Sheba have the leg of a goat? And that you can see from the reflection of something, she has the leg of a goat.
No. She have a legs with hair on it, hairy legs, like a goat, with a hoof, not with finger, with toes and mashallah.
Yeah. So Solomon, when therefore Solomon saw it placed beside him, he said, "This is for my Lord's favor, that he may prove to me whether I be grateful or ungrateful. And he who is grateful indeed." This sounds like something straight out of what's that? What's it? The Cat in the Hat?
Yeah. Hey, Lloyd, I hate to say goodbye. Love you guys. The studio are calling me. I need to join them right now.
Yeah. So tell you what, let's call it a day here, and we pick this up next week. Shall we do that?
Yeah. But the Queen of Sheba is gonna get upset because he didn't finish her story, man.
Don't worry. Well, it'll be back. I'll be back tomorrow with a different thing. Are you free tomorrow to join us this summer?
I think I can. Yeah, tomorrow I can.
Okay, then I'll do so tomorrow. So, guys, So the question is: will the Queen of Sheba have her hair waxed? Will she? Won't she? Was hair wax available at the time? Will Solomon say, "You need depilation"? Will there be laser treatment? Come back next week for the next exciting episode of the Sources of the Quran. Amen. Cheers, Usama. Take care. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow. Yeah. So, Thunderous, JC, any last words?
No, thank you very much, Lloyd. It was very short notice for me. I'd only just got in the door, but thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to come on the show as usual.
Yeah, JC.
And I will just actually quote the great scholar Yasir Qadi when he said, "The standard narrative has holes in it." It looks like he was right.
Right. Yep. So for the audience, I mean, hopefully you've been convinced of the truth of the Quran at this point, and you can't wait to rush out and go say the Shah na. So hopefully this was interesting, entertaining, educational, and hysterically funny at the same time. But really, there's some issues with the Quranic narrative, because if the Quran is telling the truth, why is it using myths, legends, stories, kids' tales, comic books, and all sorts of fiction? That's one question that Muslims really do need to answer. So, guys, I will be back tomorrow night. We'll be talking about the Gnostic origins and the Manichaean influences on Islam in the Quran. So take care, everyone. Good night. God bless. We'll see you.